Okay, so this one is a little bit different from other videos I've made in this subject. And I'm doing it really for the record, just for the record, because I think it's just one other approach to take. Whenever I've spoken about the subject, I've spoke about it kind of as an observer. I haven't actually witnessed any of the disruption directly. It's all secondary, from news sources. But like most of the British public, I'm wholly fed up with just stop oil. Now, if you're watching this, you may have caught the headline in my video, the title of my video, direct messages just stop oil. So, um, you'll probably feel, oh, I'm not going to watch this, because, you don't want to be yelled at. Well, I'm not going to yell at you, and I'm not going to even throw out insults. Um, I don't want to say anything I've said, but I'm just putting this for the record. Also, I'm not naive. I'm well aware that it's very, very difficult to reason with people who have such dogma. So anyone else watching this might think I'm wasting my time. I'm really just doing it for the record, because one narrative I've seen coming from Just Stop Oil is that they're the victims somehow, perversely. And they've actually, in some of their public statements, ask the public to not get so angry with them. So I want to partly directly challenge that. Okay, so if you're watching this, you're just stop oil activist. Um, you may be at different levels. You may be actually involved in some of the stunts. Disrupting sporting events, gluing your hands to roads, whatever it might be. Now, quite clearly, you have some degree of organisation involved. I can imagine how it goes. Well, I'm guessing you have localized meetings where you talk about where your next event is going to be. Most of it seems to be in London, but there's a few others across the country. And clearly, your intention is to get noticed. Um, Now, in terms of actually changing environmental policy, you've been a complete failure. You haven't done that. In terms of getting attention, yeah, you've succeeded in that. So, in that sense, I concede that it's perhaps one of your very few victories. You have got attention, but is it the right attention? Now, if you're a young person, you're at university, you're 19, 20, 21 years old. I get it. I've been at university. You want to change the world. You feel angry, you feel motivated, you want to change the world. And I'm not against that. I'm actually not against activism. I'm not against protest even. But you need to look at history. The fact of the matter is, no social movement has ever succeeded by polarizing the public. Now, one go-to that Just Stop Oil likes to come out with is, well, what about the suffragettes? They done these militant tactics. They blew up post boxes. They vandalized shop windows, and they were very unpopular. That's true. But you need to look at what actually followed. Women didn't get full suffrage in this country until 1928. 1928. The peak of suffragette activity was 1913, just before the First World War. Um, and there is simply no hard evidence to suggest that those very unpopular tactics were a direct correlation with getting women to vote. That is a popular narrative that I think needs to be seriously challenged, because there's no evidence that it's the case that the one thing directly led to the other. In fact, there's a lot of reasons why women ultimately got the vote. Certainly, the tireless work of more moderate suffragettes, I would argue, or suffragists, actually, to be more precise. But also the changing labour market of the First World War. With men on the front, women done a lot of jobs that men traditionally done, and they done them well. So it showed, that women should have been treated equally. So there was a lot of changing philosophy. There was a lot of social changes in that sense. If you look at the American Civil Rights Movement, what galvanized that in the end after the March on Selma, um, the Freedom Riders were brutally beaten by Alabama State Police. That angered, most of Middle America. So that galvanized that movement. Um, Now, in 4 years, Extinction Rebellion, Insulate Britain, and Now Just Stop Oil, they have absolutely failed to galvanize public opinion. And I would say to you, if you really, really want positive change, if you really want these goals that you're demanding, I personally think that the goals are wholly unrealistic. But even if you want to see some of them, okay, um, be sensible about it. This strategy of angering the public, of polarizing the public, it's just brainless. It's not an intelligent strategy. And you have to ask yourself, if you're a young person, you're going to notch up a criminal record. You know, every time you get arrested for vandalism or for your, blocking traffic or whatever tactic you're going to get involved with. Now, you may think, okay, I accept that. I'm going to go to prison for a while or I'll get a heavy fine. And I'm well aware of how Just Stop Oil is funded. I'm well aware that there's millionaires backing this group. So consider that. Don't call yourself socialist when you're being backed by millionaires. Um, I know there's some crossover here where a lot of you feel that you're on the political left. Well, you're being backed by millionaires. Um, Also, a lot of the people you're impacting are ordinary, in some cases, working class people. Ordinary people trying to get to blue collar jobs, for example. Um, that what does that prove? What does that prove? Um, I've heard the narrative. I've heard how scared you are. You say that you're doing it for the future generation. You're terrified about the future of the planet. Well, let me make my position clear. I don't like to see the planet being destroyed. And I'm not a reaction right wing that sort of says there are no issues here, that we should just have unlimited use of fossil fuels, or that there are no problems regarding the environment or rising global temperatures. Quite clearly, there are. We had record temperatures last year. Um, I think issues like plastic pollution is a major, major issue. I've long felt that's been underestimated. And there's a lot of other factors. So by no means am I coming from a point that it's all hot air and it's all, no pun intended, that there's nothing there. I don't want to see the planet ruined. I don't want to see um, increasing floods, people dying in heat waves, some of the world's poorest people struggling the most. Those are all very real issues. But during the Glasgow Climate Summit, whilst ministers were trying their level best to get a deal, you had Greta Thunberg outside saying blah, blah, blah. Now, are you happy to be represented by someone who really, she has no answers? Think about it. The people who are leading you, Greta Thunberg, Roger Hallam, they have no real answers. All they have is criticism. So I'm well aware that, this video is probably a waste of time and it probably won't get you to look at what you're doing. But back to the point of being arrested and so on, you might think, oh well, this is worth the cause is worth the means, right? But it's going to ruin your life because you're going to polarize. And I know this from seeing activists with Just Stop Oil in the social media posts, even though family members have turned against them in some cases. I've seen this. What you're going to do is polarize your family, your friends. You're going to notch up a criminal record, which is going to make it difficult for you to get work. Okay, it may be that other people in Just Stop Oil will help you with that, but certainly it's not going to help your life, of course. Maybe you don't care. Maybe you think it's worth the means justify the ends. And you'll sort of say, well, throughout history, people have gone to prison for what they believe in. But ask yourselves, is this worth polarizing the public? Should you not be trying to get the public on side? Do you really think it is noble to stop people getting to urgent medical appointments, to mess with people's lives, stopping them get to family funerals, to weddings, and sporting events? You move, oh, it's just for rich people. Well, it may be in some cases that, for example, in Wimbledon, that's the only chance they ever get to go there. What right do you have to mess with that? Um, so I implore you, just step back a little bit, reflect on what you're doing. I'm not saying give up activism. I'm not saying just, um, I'm not even saying you have to agree with me on the extent of, what your demands are. I am saying that the tactics are utterly, utterly, utterly stupid. I mean, seriously, can you people really, really look at this and say you've been a success? If your intention is to get pure attention, media attention, I guess in that sense you've been a success. But if your intention is to just stop oil, you've been a complete failure. You haven't just stopped oil. The government has not suspended new licenses. Also, if you really, really want to do this, if you really want to practice what you preach, stop wearing those high visibility jackets with your oil based, because the public see your hypocrisy. Finally, for your own sake, if you continue to wind up the public, if you increasingly go down this path of infuriating people, and that is what you're doing, make no mistake about it, actually you're putting your own safety in jeopardy, because not everyone will be content just going online and saying you're idiots. Some people, if you push them hard enough, they might turn violent. Are you really content to put yourselves at risk? You may think again, oh well, the ends justify the means. But all you're doing is angering people. All you're doing is stressing people out. And frankly, you're getting the majority to hate you. Is that what you really want? Will you look back and think, oh, I was justified? Do you really think 20 years from now, if we do have more floods and increasingly hot summers, people will look back and say, oh, well, those eco activists were correct to, stop people going about their daily lives? No, no one's going to thank you for it. If you really, really want to be productive, go for it. Support sustainable businesses, green businesses, come up with eco solutions. I'm sure some of you aren't stupid, although I think your tactics are stupid. I'm sure some of you have the intelligence to come up with innovative green ideas for sustainability. There's a lot of positive things can be done. Um, why not? Why not? If you really are about protecting future generations, prove it by not showing such utter contempt for this generation, because that's what people see. Um, what I'm saying here is you seem to think that the public are somehow against your ideas. Okay, some people will be. Some people will say what you're arguing is utterly unsustainable. And I happen to think that on some level as well. But you know what? There are other people out there who actually agree with you, but they don't agree with your tactics. So go figure. The vast majority are against your tactics, and by extension, the vast majority are against you. Is that what you really want? Do you really think that you have a platform to stand on when you continue to show such contempt for democracy and such contempt for the majority? So I'm going to wrap this up. My intention with this video was not to be popular. It wasn't to sort of it wasn't even to say, oh, let's agree to disagree. Clearly, we're going to have very deep disagreements on your tactics. But I implore you, I'm particularly thinking of the young members of Just Stop Oil here. I get it. When I was at university, I had very strong views on a lot of issues, and I actively protested against the Iraq War. Now you might say, well, that didn't make any difference because their government went ahead and invaded anyway. Um, I've been involved in other protests over the years. I'm not against protest, but you have to be smart about it. If you polarize the public, you're not going to get anywhere. And in terms of actually achieving the goals that you claim to be all about, just stopping oil, this movement has been an utter, utter failure. Now, maybe if you'd actually been more reasonable from the start, if you'd actually spoke to the public, if you'd actually tried to get your message across without polarizing people, if you had only targeted big energy companies instead of targeting ordinary people, you might actually find that the British public is on your side. Because believe it or not, big energy companies are not very popular at the moment. Okay, so if you actually galvanize that, you might find that more of the public would support you. But maybe you don't want public support. And if that is the case, then frankly, you're just digging yourself deeper and deeper. And whatever happens to you, the public are simply not going to care. If you're thrown in prison for even longer sentences, no one's going to feel sorry for you. So I've seen the posts on Just Stop Oil, ordinary people punished for caring. No. What the public read is obnoxious activists jailed for breaking the law. They're not looking at you as ordinary people. They're looking at you as zealots, as extremists, um, and obnoxious. Is that what you want? Is that really what you want? And if your answer to that is yes, I don't care, that just paints you to be utterly obnoxious, doesn't it? So finally, I'm just going to say, what are you trying to do here? Exactly what you're trying to do. Because if it's just stopping oil, you're failing. That isn't happening. The government hasn't, said we're not going to halt the oil licenses. Labour's wavering on it, but the thing about the Labour Party, they're not stupid. They know that public pressure right now is against you. So Labour isn't going to pander to all your demands either, because they know that the political atmosphere will be such that they will be accused of pandering to you. So, whatever way we look at this, your tactics are failing. They're not a failure. And people don't see you as ordinary citizens. They just don't. They see you as zealots, they see you as extremists, and they see you, frankly, as quite callous. Do you want to be seen as callous, unpleasant individuals who don't care about messing with others' lives? You cannot preach about saving future generations when you're attacking this generation. And, it's no good saying, well, we messed up this person's day, but, that's getting all the attention. Like, for example, the wedding stunt. Yes, I know Just Stop Oil claims it wasn't them. Um, I'm talking about the disruption of George Osborne's wedding. Well, whether it was or wasn't, I don't think they're being very honest about that, actually. But whether it was or wasn't, the point is, um, people don't think, oh, well, so many people die in Africa from drought, or fishermen are struggling in Bangladesh because of rising waters, and that sort of thing. People are not thinking about that. They're saying you're messing with people's lives. There's no good saying, for example, people shouldn't complain about it because the planet's dying, because they do not see your tactics as being part of the solution. This is the thing. You cannot lecture people when your tactics are so utterly counterproductive. Do you really think that vandalizing a building is going to lower CO2? It isn't. It just isn't. And I'm not saying the struggle is easy. I'm not saying that, trying to save the planet is an easy thing. But you also need to be very careful what you're listening to from the likes of Roger Hallam. I'm not saying, you know, don't listen to climate scientists, but consider the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They are not talking about billions going to die in a couple of years. This is the sort of dystopian narratives that Just Stop Oil are coming out with. The problem is serious and people are dying, but that is actually very dangerous propaganda, and it is simply not true. So, for God's sake, or if you're an atheist, for goodness sake, just do yourselves a favor, step back a bit and stop being such complete idiots. Because all you're doing is getting the public to hate you. That's it. I implore you, just stop, grow up. Because something, there may come a point where the government will say, well, actually, they'll cut off your funding. They'll say this is funding criminal activity, in which case you can't sort of rely on, oh well, I'll go to jail, but I'll be bailed out. You might not be bailed out next time, and the government is under pressure to get ever more tougher legislation, and it will go ahead because there's support for it. So stop being foolish and just consider what you're doing here.